The road unwound like a spool of gray thread in the November dusk. 8 hours. I had counted them by the ache in my lower back and the number of times the oldie station had cycled through the same 10 songs. The engine of the pickup hummed a familiar tune, a sound more constant than any voice in my life had been for the last 10 years. My hands knew the worn leather of the steering wheel better than they knew the hands of my own son. I had a pecan pie on the passenger seat. Mary's recipe. The smell of cinnamon and toasted nuts filled the cab, a ghost in the machine. She had always made the pies. Now I did. I had spent the better part of yesterday getting the crust just right, the way she had taught me. Flaky, she'd said, not tough. You have to have a light hand, Frank. A light hand. I wondered if anyone would notice. Pulling into their subdivision felt like crossing a border into a foreign country. The houses were all some variation of beige, huddled together under the weak afternoon sun, their manicured lawns sleeping under a thin blanket of frost. Michael and Karen's house was the biggest one on the cul-de-sac. It had a 3-car garage and a basketball hoop that, as far as I knew, had never been used. The front door burst open before I even killed the engine. It wasn't for me. A tide of people I didn't know spilled out onto the lawn, laughing too loudly. Men in crisp sweaters and women in expensive-looking coats. I saw my son, Michael, in the center of them, holding a glass of wine, his face flushed. He was telling a story, his hands gesturing wildly. He looked happy. He hadn't seen me. I sat there for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. I watched them through the windshield. It felt like watching a television show with the sound off. I was an observer of a life I had helped create but was no longer a part of. I took a deep breath, the scent of the pie a small comfort. Then I got out of the truck. Dad, you made it. Michael's voice boomed when he finally saw me. He broke from his group and gave me a quick, one-armed hug, his other hand still clutching his wine. It was the kind of hug you give a distant cousin. A duty. Hello, Michael. Traffic was okay. He was already looking back at his friends, his attention splitting. It was fine. Great, great. Listen, come on in. Karen's inside, going crazy. Her parents are here. He said it like a warning. He took the pie from my hands. Oh, awesome, the pie. Karen, look. Dad brought the pie. He held it up like a trophy before setting it on a counter already crowded with dishes I didn't recognize. It disappeared into the clutter. The house was a wall of noise. Music I didn't know, the clatter of plates, a dozen conversations happening at once. Karen swept past me, a frantic look in her eye. Frank, hi. So glad you can make it. The turkey is taking forever. She kissed the air somewhere near my cheek and was gone. My grandson, Alex, was slouched on the grand staircase, his face illuminated by the blue light of his phone. He was 16 now. Ayúdame. Alex, I said. He looked up, his eyes blank for a second before recognition dawned. Oh, hey, Grandpa. He gave a small wave, and his eyes went right back down to the screen. The flicker of a video game reflected in his glasses. I stood in the entryway, my coat still on. I was a piece of furniture that had just been delivered, waiting to be put in its proper place. No one offered to take my coat. No one asked me to sit down. I was just there, a silent fixture in the chaos of their perfect holiday. I watched Michael laugh with Karen's father, clapping him on the back. They were talking about golf trips and stock options. After what felt like an eternity of standing in the doorway, feeling the cold draft every time the door opened, Michael seemed to remember I existed. He came over, a look of harried inspiration on his face. Hey, Dad. The guys are all getting ready to watch the game. Big rivalry today. He gestured vaguely toward the living room, which was packed. There wasn't an empty seat. Karen's father was in my usual chair, the big leather recliner I had given them when I downsized. Then came the words I would echo in the cab of my truck for the entire 8-hour drive home. There's a great setup in the basement, he said, all cheerful efficiency. Big screen, comfy couch. You can watch the game in the basement. Get away from all this noise. He thought he was being considerate. That's the part that twisted the knife. In his mind, he was doing me a favor. He was giving me a quiet place, a sanctuary. He didn't see what he was really doing. He was sending the old man, the relic, down to the storage room. Out of sight, out of mind. I didn't argue. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. I looked at his handsome, oblivious face, the face of the boy I had taught to ride a bike and bait a hook. I saw a stranger. "Okay, son," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. I turned and walked toward the basement door. The handle was cold. The stairs were steep and unlit. I felt my way down, my hand trailing along the cool, painted cinder block wall. The basement smelled of damp concrete and forgotten things. There was a large television, as promised, and a couch, an old floral one that had been in my house for 20 years before they'd taken it. Piled in the corners were boxes. Some of them were mine, marked Dad's old stuff. Photos, books, my wife's collection of porcelain birds, still wrapped in newspaper from a decade ago. I sat on the couch. It sighed under my weight, a puff of dusty air. Upstairs, I could hear the muffled roar of laughter, the thumping of the music, the life of the party. Down here, there was only the hum of the furnace and the silence. I didn't turn on the television. I just sat there. I stared at the blank screen. It reflected my own image back at me, a dim, stooped shape in the gloom. An afterthought. I thought about the 8-hour drive, the anticipation, the pie, Mary's pie. I thought about a lifetime of birthdays missed for overtime, of scraped-together savings for college tuition, of weekends spent fixing his car or his plumbing or his deck. All of it a long road leading to this. A basement. My hands didn't tremble. Not yet. A strange sort of calm settled over me. It wasn't anger. It was colder than that. It was clarity. The kind of clarity you get when the fog finally lifts and you see the edge of the cliff you've been walking along for miles. I realized I had been waiting. For years. Waiting for them to ask about my life. Waiting for them to remember the stories behind the things I'd given them. Waiting to be seen not as a utility, a handyman, a bank, a babysitter, but as a person. As their father. The waiting was over. I sat there for 1 full hour. I timed it by the furnace kicking on and off. I heard footsteps on the stairs once. It was Alex. He clattered down, opened an old freezer, grabbed a frozen pizza, and clattered back up without a word to me. He didn't even seem to register I was there. When the hour was up, I stood. My knees cracked, a sound loud in the quiet room. I walked back up the stairs. The noise from the party hit me again, but this time it sounded different. It sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's life. I walked through the throng in the kitchen. No one noticed. I was invisible. It was a superpower I had just discovered. I found my coat on the bed, under a pile of purses. I picked up my keys from the bowl by the door. I didn't say goodbye. A goodbye would have implied I was expected to be missed. I walked out the front door and closed it softly behind me. The cold air felt clean. It felt honest. I got in my truck. The pie was still on the counter. I imagined it being found later that night, after everyone was gone. Oh, look, Dad's pie. I forgot. Maybe they would eat it. Maybe they would throw it away. It didn't matter anymore. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, the house blazed with light and laughter. It shrank until it was just another beige box, and then it was gone. The drive home was different. I wasn't tired. I felt a strange, wired energy. The highway was dark and empty. I drove past the turnoff for the usual diner I stopped at. I didn't want familiarity. I wanted to keep moving. I thought about the lake house. I built most of it myself with Gus. We'd spent 2 summers after we got back from Vietnam framing it, roofing it, putting in the windows that looked out over the water. My sweat was in its wood. Mary had planted the hydrangeas that still bloomed every July. It was always understood that it would go to Michael. It was part of the legacy, the inheritance. The word inheritance tasted like ash in my mouth. An inheritance is earned, not by money but by love, by respect, by showing up, by not sending your father to the basement. I drove for 4 hours straight before I saw the glow of a 24-hour truck stop. I pulled off. The diner attached was nearly empty. A couple of truckers hunched over coffee at the counter. A young waitress with tired eyes was wiping down tables. I sat in a booth. The vinyl was cracked and cold. "Just coffee, hon?" I said when she came over. "Black. Black." She brought it over. The mug was thick and warm in my hands. I stared into the dark liquid. I thought about Gus. Gus had nothing. He lived in a 2-room apartment above a hardware store. His wife had passed a few years back. His own kids were scattered across the country, too busy for him, too. We were a match set. But Gus called. He called every Sunday morning. We'd talk for 10 minutes. About the weather. About fishing. About the funny-shaped potato he'd bought at the store. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a connection that wasn't based on obligation. He'd never been to the lake house without me. He always waited for an invitation. He respected that it was mine. He respected me. The waitress came back and refilled my cup without me asking. "You okay, mister? You look a million miles away." "Just a long drive," I said. "Holidays," she said, nodding with a sad sort of wisdom. "Brings out the best and the worst." I left her a $20 tip for $2 worth of coffee. When I got home, the house was cold and silent. It didn't feel empty. It felt mine. The smell of old books and wood polish was welcoming. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture. My chair, Mary's sewing table, the grandfather clock in the hall that my father had built. These were things with stories they had never asked to hear. I didn't go to bed. I went to the phone. It was 3 in the morning, but I knew Gus would be up. He never slept much. A gift from the jungle we'd left behind 50 years ago. He picked up on the second ring. "Frank." His voice was gravelly with sleep. "It's me, Gus. I woke you." "Nah, just watching the shadows dance." "You all right? You sound different." "I'm fine, Gus. Never been better." I took a breath. "Listen, you remember the lake house? Remember it? I've still got splinters from that damn roof." "What about it? I want you to have it." Silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence. Then, "Frank, what are you talking about? Is this about Michael?" He knew. Of course, he knew. He'd seen the whole movie before. "It's about me, Gus," I said. "It's about putting things where they belong. The house is yours. I'll call a lawyer in the morning." "Frank," he started, his voice thick with emotion. "You can't just, that's for your boy. That's his birthright. A birthright has to be claimed, Gus." He never claimed it. He never even saw it. He just assumed it. "You and I, we built that place. It's got more of you in it than it has of him." I could hear him breathing. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll go fishing off the dock. Say you'll watch the sunset from a porch. That's all I need." "Okay, Frank," he said, his voice quiet. "Okay." We hung up. I stood there in the dark hall, the receiver still in my hand. A weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had lifted. It felt like the first breath of clean air after being in a smoky room. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee, the real stuff from the beans I ground myself. I sat in my chair and watched the dawn break. The decision was made. Now came the work. The next Monday, I didn't call the family lawyer who had handled my will years ago, the one Michael played golf with. I opened the phone book, a heavy, dusty tome I hadn't touched in years. I ran my finger down the list of attorneys until I found a name that felt right. Jensen. Robert Jensen. It sounded solid, unsentimental. His office was in an old brick building downtown. It smelled of floor wax and old paper. The woman at the front desk was polite but distant. Mr. Jensen was a small, neat man with wire-rimmed glasses and a gaze that didn't miss a thing. He didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. "I want to transfer the deed of a property, a lake house, to a friend of mine," I said. "And I want to draw up a new will." He made a note on a yellow legal pad. "The property, is it mortgaged?" "Paid off 30 years ago." "And the friend's name?" "Augustus Riley." "And the new will? How do you wish to change it?" "I want to liquidate my assets upon my death. The house, the investments, everything. I want the proceeds to be placed in a trust." "For your son, Michael?" "No," I said. The word was flat, final. "I want the trust to be for my grandson, Alexander, with a stipulation. The funds are for his education or to start a business. They are to be managed by the executor of my estate and cannot be accessed or co-signed by his parents, Michael or Karen." Mr. Jensen looked at me over his glasses. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask if I was sure. He just nodded and made another note. "And who do you want to name as executor?" "You," I said. He nodded again. "I see. We will also need to revoke any existing power of attorney you may have granted." "Yes," I said. I had signed that document 10 years ago, giving Michael power of attorney if I became incapacitated. The thought of him making decisions for me now sent a chill through me. "We should do that immediately." "Very well, Mr. Miller," he said, standing and offering a dry, firm handshake. My office will draw up the necessary documents. We'll start with the property transfer and the revocation of the POA. I walked out of that office into the bright, cold sunlight. I felt steady. I felt clean. I had started sweeping out the corners of my life. That afternoon, I went to my workshop. The smell of sawdust and old metal was a balm. My tools hung in their places on the pegboard, clean and orderly. I saw the small, ornate wooden box on the top shelf. Inside was a set of antique chisels, their rosewood handles smooth and dark. I had bought them at an estate sale 20 years ago, saving them for Alex. I had imagined teaching him how to use them, how to feel the wood grain, how to make something beautiful and lasting with his own hands. That dream was dust. He had never once set foot in my workshop. His hands only knew the smooth plastic of a game controller. I took the box down. I opened it and laid the chisels out on my workbench. I picked each one up, feeling its weight, its perfect balance. Then I took them out of the fancy box and placed them in the main tray of my own toolbox, right alongside the tools I used every day. They weren't a future inheritance anymore. They were just tools. They were mine. Then I went into the house. In the living room, over the mantel, was the big, professionally framed photograph from Michael and Karen's wedding. They were young, smiling, cutting a giant cake. I had stood proudly in the background. I looked at it for a long time. It felt like a picture of people I used to know. I got a stepladder and carefully took it down. The wall behind it was a lighter shade of paint, a perfect rectangle of the past. I didn't break the glass or tear the photo. I just carried it up to the attic, wrapped it in an old moving blanket, and slid it behind a stack of storm windows. Out of sight, I reclaimed the mantelpiece. I put a small, faded picture of Mary there instead, one of her in the garden, smiling at me. That felt right. A week went by, a week of blessed silence. I went about my days. I made my coffee. I read the paper. I spent hours in the workshop, finally starting a project I had put off for years, a rocking chair built from a single plank of cherrywood I had been saving. The work was slow and precise. It required all my attention. It was a meditation. Then the first text came. It was from Michael. "Dad, you okay? Haven't heard from you." I looked at the message. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a vast, quiet distance. I deleted it. I did not reply. I deleted it. The next day, another one. "Seriously, Dad, call me. Karen is getting worried." Worried. That was their word. It didn't mean what they thought it meant. It meant their routine was disrupted. The neat little box they had put me in was empty, and it was inconvenient. I deleted the message. Then the phone call started. I didn't answer. I let them go to voicemail. My phone had a feature that transcribed the messages into text. I could read their escalating panic without ever having to hear their voices. "Dad, it's Michael. Pick up. This isn't funny anymore. We were worried when you left Thanksgiving. Just let us know you're alive. Frank, it's Karen. I am very disappointed in this behavior. You have Michael completely spun up. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Now call us back. It's childish. Dad, I got a letter from your bank. It says I've been removed from your accounts. What the hell is going on? Did you get scammed? Are you being taken advantage of? Call me the second you get this." They thought I was a victim or a child. It never occurred to them that I was an adult making my own decisions. Their confusion was the clearest sign I had done the right thing. They didn't know me at all. They only knew the role I was supposed to play. The rocking chair began to take shape. The gentle curve of the rockers. The precise joinery of the back slats. I worked until my hands ached and my mind was quiet. Gus called on Sunday, as always. "The deed came, Frank," he said. His voice was hushed, reverent. "A lawyer sent it. It's all official." "Good," I said. "It's where it belongs." "My kids wouldn't understand this in a million years," he said quietly. "They think everything is about money. It's about respect, Gus. That's all it's ever about." "I'm driving up there tomorrow," he said, "just to look at it, just to stand on the porch." "You do that. Send me a picture." Just before we hung up, he said, "They'll show up, you know. They won't let this go." "I know," I said. "I'm ready." A few days later, a different kind of message appeared on my phone. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Grandpa, it's Alex. Are you okay? Mom and Dad are going crazy. They said you're giving everything away. I stared at the text for a long time. It was the first time he had ever texted me. I typed a reply. It took me a few minutes, my thumb clumsy on the small screen. I am fine, son. Don't you worry about me. He replied almost instantly. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. It was a madhouse. I should have come down to the basement to say hi. There it was. An apology. A simple, honest acknowledgement. It was more than I had gotten from his parents in 40 years. It's okay, Alex, I typed back. I understand. I saved his number in my phone. Under his name. Not grandson. Alex. The work with Mr. Jensen continued. We found a real estate agent, a no-nonsense woman named Carol. She came to the house and walked through it with a clipboard. Good bones, she said. A little dated, but solid. We can sell this. People want a house that's been cared for. Cared for. The words hung in the air. Sorting through the house was the hardest part. Every object was a memory. Mary's collection of teacups. The ridiculous singing fish plaque Michael had given me as a joke one year. The report cards and crayon drawings I had saved. For decades, I had been the curator of our family museum. Now, I was deaccessioning the collection. I packed one box of keepsakes for Alex. The good things. My father's watch. A few of Mary's favorite books. A picture of him as a little boy sitting on my shoulders at a baseball game. I labeled it and set it aside. The rest? I called a charity that helped veterans furnish their homes. They came with a big truck and emptied the house. They were grateful. They treated my old furniture like treasure. I watched them carry out the couch I had bought when Michael was born, the kitchen table where he'd done his homework, the bed he'd slept in. It wasn't sad. It was a release. I was becoming lighter, unburdened. Gus was right. They showed up. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in the workshop, sanding the final armrest of the rocking chair. I heard a car pull into the driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel too fast. Then a car door slammed. Then another. Heavy, angry footsteps on the porch. A loud banging on the front door. Not a knock. A summons. I didn't rush. I took a deep breath, smelling the sweet scent of the cherry wood dust. I carefully set my sanding block down. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I walked through the now echoing house and opened the door. Michael and Karen stood there. His face was blotchy and red. Karen's was tight with fury. What the hell is going on? Michael's voice was a choked roar. The house is for sale? You gave Gus the lake house. Are you out of your mind? I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. I let his anger wash over me, and I felt nothing but a great, calm sadness for him. We have been calling for weeks. Karen shrieked, stepping forward. Weeks? Do you have any idea how worried we've been? We thought you were dead in a ditch somewhere. No, you didn't, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through their noise. You thought I was trying to get your attention. You were annoyed. They both stopped, stunned into a brief silence by the simple truth of it. Dad, this has gone far enough, Michael said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening growl. You're going to call this lawyer, this Jensen, and you're going to undo all of it. The house. The lake house. All of it. Now, we think you're having some kind of episode. You're not competent to make these decisions. Competent. There was the word. The weapon they had been saving. The final dismissal. The old man is crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. I looked past him at Karen, who was nodding in agreement, her arms crossed. I saw the whole story in their faces. Their indignation. Their absolute, unshakable belief that they were the victims here. I was there, Michael, I said softly. He blinked. What? There where? At your house. For Thanksgiving. I drove 8 hours. I brought a pie. And when I got there, you sent me to the basement. His face fell. A flicker of something, shame, maybe, crossed his features before the anger flooded back in to cover it. Oh, for God's sake, Karen exclaimed. This is what this is about. Because we asked you to watch the game in the basement? The house was packed. We were trying to give you some peace and quiet. I know what you were trying to do, I said, my eyes still on Michael. You were trying to put me away, so you wouldn't have to deal with me. It's what you've been doing for years, in little ways. I just finally decided to make it easier for you. That is not true. Michael's voice cracked. We love you, Dad. The words sounded hollow. An automatic response, learned by rote. He had not said them in years. Love doesn't send people to the basement, son, I said. Respect doesn't. You have a beautiful home, a successful life. You don't need my house. You don't need my money. You never really needed me. Just the idea of me, tucked away until you needed something fixed. I opened the door wider, gesturing to the empty rooms behind me. It's done. The house is sold. The lake house belongs to Gus. My will is my own business. There's nothing here for you anymore. Karen's mouth opened, a torrent of furious protest ready to spill out, but I held up a hand. I'm not going to argue, I said. I'm not angry. I'm just finished. This is not a punishment. It's a consequence. You wanted me out of the way. Now I am. I looked at my son, at the confused, angry man he had become. I saw the little boy in there somewhere, buried deep. I felt a pang of loss, not for him, but for the father I had tried to be. You should go now, I said. I have things to do. And I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, the latch clicking softly into place. I leaned against it for a moment, listening to their stunned silence on the other side, followed by muttered, furious words, and then the sound of their car speeding away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt a profound sense of peace. The house was quiet. The war was over. I had surrendered, but I had won my freedom. The house sold quickly. I took very little with me. My clothes, my tools, the box for Alex, the picture of Mary, the new rocking chair. I bought a small apartment in a town 2 states away. It was near the lake, near Gus. It had 2 bedrooms, a small, modern kitchen, and a large, south-facing balcony. The second bedroom I turned into a workshop. It was smaller than my old one, but it was all I needed. My new life fell into a simple, steady rhythm. I would wake with the sun. I make my coffee and sit on the balcony, watching the light change on the trees. Some days, I'd drive over to Gus's place. He called it the lodge, and we'd sit on the porch of the house I built. We wouldn't talk much. We'd fish, or we'd just watch the water. He had planted new hydrangeas right next to the ones Mary had planted. He had his own kids and grandkids visit. They were loud and cheerful. They called me Uncle Frank. They asked me to show them how to skip stones. They treated Gus with a loving, boisterous respect that was beautiful to see. I watched him with them and felt no envy, only a quiet joy for my friend. I joined a local VFW post. I had lunch there a few times a week. I played poker on Thursday nights with men who had stories like mine, men who understood the language of silence. We talked about the world, about our aches and pains, about the price of lumber. We never talked about our children's disappointments. We didn't have to. We could see it in each other's eyes. I got a text from Alex every few weeks. He'd send a picture of a car he liked, or ask a question about something from school. I'd answer him. I sent him a picture of the finished rocking chair. "That's beautiful, Grandpa," he wrote back. "You made that?" "I did," I replied, "from a single piece of cherry wood." Wow. It was a start, a small seed planted in new ground. My life was no longer about waiting. It was about doing. I read books I'd always meant to read. I listened to music, old records from my youth, the scratches and pops as much a part of the song as the notes themselves. I was not lonely. I was solitary. There's a world of difference between the two. Loneliness is a lack. Solitude is a presence. The presence of yourself. One afternoon, about a year after I had moved, a letter arrived. It was in a plain white envelope. The return address was Michael's. My name and new address were written in his familiar, slightly messy script. I didn't know how he'd gotten the address. Maybe from Alex. Maybe he'd hired someone. I held the letter in my hand. It felt heavy. I could feel the folded pages inside. I imagined the words, the excuses, the justifications, the accusations, the pleas, a whole world of their reality, sealed inside an envelope. I didn't open it. I put it on the small table by the door. I went and put on a pot of coffee. I went out to my workshop and looked at the new project I was starting, a series of small, intricate birdhouses. Then I walked back inside. The letter was still there. An ambassador from a country I no longer lived in. It's strange. For years, I thought family was a debt you owed, a duty you performed. I thought my role was to give and forgive endlessly. I thought my silence in the face of 1,000 small cuts was a sign of strength. patience. But it wasn't. It was an erasure. My own slow, quiet suicide of the soul. The silence isn't empty anymore. It's clean. It's a space that I have cleared for myself. It's the sound of my own thoughts, my own breathing. The sound of a man who is finally, after 80 years, at home in his own life. The letter can wait. I have a birdhouse to build. The wrens will be nesting soon, and I want to give them a good, solid home. A place they are welcome. A place they belong. I will read it when I am ready. Or maybe I won't. The choice for the first time is entirely mine. And that is a legacy worth more than any house, any money, anything I could ever have left behind. It is the only inheritance that truly matters.